what if spiritual renewal wasn't just something you had to sit around and wait for? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea that renewal is actually an active, dynamic partnership. And believe it or not, you play a huge role.
You ever have that feeling like you're just spinning your wheels spiritually? You're waiting and waiting for some kind of breakthrough that just never seems to show up? It's a super common feeling, and the source material we're digging into today gets right into the heart of it.
And this quote, wow, it just gets right to it, doesn't it? It completely flips the script on how we usually think about this. What if the holdup isn't on God's end, but on ours? This idea suggests that, way more often than we think, the ball is actually in our court.
Okay, so if taking action is the key, what kind of action are we even talking about? Well, the good news is we don't have to guess. Our source material lays out a really clear, structured roadmap that's designed to take the guesswork out of it and get you moving forward.
So let's start with a basic framework. The whole process really gets broken down into two super clear categories. They help us understand our role and God's role in this whole partnership for renewal.
So on one side, you've got what are called recurring actions. Just think of these as your consistent spiritual habits. The things you can do day in and day out. Then on the other side, you have variable actions. And these are the more specific, unique instructions you get for your own personal journey.
And check this out. This breakdown is pretty amazing. The chart shows that the huge majority of this whole renewal process is made up of those consistent actions, the ones that are totally within our control. I mean, how empowering is that? It's a real game changer. The point is, there's a whole toolkit of actions we can start using, like right now. So let's open up that toolkit and start with the personal stuff, the foundational practices. First up, what you say, it really, really matters. And this isn't just about positive thinking. No, this is about actively speaking God's promises out loud, taking ownership of the prophetic words spoken over you, and literally watering the seeds of the dreams that God has put inside your heart. It's all about getting your words to line up with His truth. Next, let's talk about worship and praise. The source material talks about these not just as, emotional expressions, but as seriously powerful spiritual weapons. It says worship music can actually break spiritual oppression, that heavy negative feeling, and praise that actively shifts your focus away from how big your problem is and onto how great your provider is. We also need things that help us look back and see just how far we've come. Journaling is fantastic for this. It helps you see patterns and remember all the prayers that got answered. And communion is described here as this powerful covenant act, a moment of real spiritual nourishment and just getting realigned with God's grace. And listen, this stuff isn't all just happening in your head or in some abstract spiritual realm. The source makes a great point. Taking care of your physical body is a spiritual responsibility too. The idea is that our physical health totally impacts our spiritual energy and clarity because our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. It's about taking care of the whole package.
But here's the thing. This renewal journey was never meant to be a solo mission. The roadmap really emphasizes that we are so much stronger together. So let's look at the actions that have to do with getting plugged into a community of believers.
It really starts with being an active part of your church. And that means more than just showing up on Sunday. It's about corporate worship, where spiritual power is said to be multiplied. And volunteering, that's like a training ground for developing a true servant's heart. Of course, faith doesn't just stay inside the four walls of a building. It's meant to extend outward, right? Whether that's volunteering in your wider community, really loving your neighbors, or creating a spiritual legacy by mentoring others, even simple practical acts of kindness can reveal God's nature to people. And there's just incredible strength that comes from smaller, more intentional groups. Things like Bible studies or men's groups, they give you accountability and a safe place to be both challenged and encouraged. The source points out a key principle here. God commands a blessing wherever unity exists. Okay, so we've covered a lot of those recurring actions, the things that are in our control. Now let's switch gears and talk about those variable actions, which are all about learning to tune in to specific divine guidance. So this side of the partnership is all about listening and then responding. It goes beyond just a general routine and into very specific instructions. We're talking about attentive obedience to a unique path for your life. intercession that's bigger than just individuals and covers whole cities, and really targeted prayer for freedom from mindsets that just don't line up with God's truth. A really key part of this is something called the prophetic, which the source defines simply as receiving divine insight and strategic guidance. And to make this feel a bit more real, the source actually points to a specific example, a company called Aqua Regia and its prophetic reports, just to show how this can look in a structured way. The way they do it is actually pretty methodical. It's a double-blind system where a whole team of people receives messages without even knowing who they're for. Then analysts come in, look for all the patterns and recurring themes, and deliver what they call actionable intelligence. It's a very structured way to approach discerning divine guidance. And this is so important. The source also makes it crystal clear that this kind of guidance isn't just for people who can pay for a service. It points out that there are free, church-funded, prophetic, and healing rooms all over the country, which makes these kinds of resources accessible to absolutely everyone. So, we have covered a lot of different actions here. But what's the big picture? When you zoom out, what does it all add up to? Well, the source boils it all down to a really simple, memorable process. And here it is. This is the high-level goal of the entire thing. Every single action we've talked about, whether it's recurring or variable, it's all designed to do one of two things. First, to remove the strongholds, those ingrained negative ways of thinking and spiritual barriers holding you back. And second, to rebuild your mind with God's truth. It's that simple. It's a powerful, direct framework. You know, the promise of this whole framework is just clarity. It's designed to completely eliminate the guesswork from your spiritual growth. And the source actually claims that when you start putting these steps into practice, you can see immediate results, maybe even from day one. So it all comes back to this one idea. Renewal is a partnership. It absolutely requires us to actively participate. And when you look at this whole roadmap, there's really only one question left to answer, and it's the one right there on your screen. What's your first step going to be?